Benji was currently attempting to coax a packet of crisps from the back of the sofa, a feat that required the precision of a surgeon and the sheer determination of a man whose primary caloric intake relied heavily on whatever he could find between the cushions. Any joy in there? Trix's voice cut through the grime-laden air. She emerged from her bedroom, a vision of unapologetic glamour amidst the squalor. Her outfit, a slinky black number that left little to the imagination and everything to the imagination at the same time, seemed laughably out of place. Her usually impeccable blonde hair had a few strands escaping, signaling a night of strenuous effort. Benji grunted, his arm disappearing further into the sofa abyss. Just a petrified digestive biscuit, and what I think is a 20p piece, but it's fused to something unidentifiable. He extracted his arm with a sigh, holding up a grayish lump that might once have been confectionery. Still, that's dinner sorted. Trix surveyed him, a flicker of something akin to pity, or perhaps just mild amusement, in her sea green eyes. You know, Benji, most people buy food, or, accept government handouts. You're more of a hunter-gatherer of the urban jungle, survival of the fittest, Trix, and I'm fitter than that biscuit. He managed a weak smile, before his gaze drifted to the open door of her bedroom. Busy night. She tossed her head, a practiced gesture. Busy enough. Some new clientele, old enough to be my dad, rich enough to fund a small revolution, and, let's just say he had a very particular interest in my interpretive dance moves. She chuckled, a dry, knowing sound. And by interpretive dance, I mean he liked me to pretend I was a particularly flexible satnav. Benji winced. Right. Charming. His own sex life was non-existent, a fact he'd long since embraced with a sort of weary, defiant pride. He viewed it as an ascetic lifestyle choice, albeit one enforced by a cocktail of lukewarm lager and various powdered substances. Did he at least pay well? Oh, when do they not? Trix pulled a wad of crisp notes from her tiny handbag, fanning them with a theatrical flourish. We're not going to starve this week. Unless you decide to smoke it all. I'd never smoke money. Trix, Benji said, genuinely offended. That's just wasteful. There are far more efficient ways to ingest currency. His eyes, usually a watery blue, took on a slightly glazed quality as he contemplated this. Though, now you mention it, I am feeling a bit parched. Trix rolled her eyes, but a small, affectionate smile played on her lips. She tossed him a £50 note. Go on, get yourself something. And maybe something for me too. I'm craving a dodgy falafel wrap. And don't buy any of that bargain basement ketamine from Kevin down the road. It'll make your teeth fall out. Kevin's K is perfectly adequate, Benji protested, though he was already halfway out the door. The £50 note clutched like a winning lottery ticket. And I'll have you know, I only buy the premium stuff now. God standards, you know. As the front door slammed, Trix sighed, running a hand through her hair. The flat was a disaster. Benji was a walking chemical experiment, and her life was an endless parade of desperate men. But sometimes, just sometimes, a new face threw a little curveball into the monotony. She walked into her bedroom, picking up a discarded silk tie from the floor. It was an expensive tie, a subtle pattern, the kind favored by men who liked to project an air of understated power. Her client had been one of those. He'd left in a hurry, muttering something about a late-night parliamentary vote. Parliamentary vote? She shrugged. Whatever, as long as he paid. Benji returned an hour later, a triumphant glint in his watery blue eyes. In one hand, he clutched a lukewarm can of Foster's and a plastic bag containing Trix's falafel wrap. In the other, a small, discreet Ziploc bag containing a crystalline powder. See? Proper stuff. None of Kevin's artisanal bathtub batch. Trix, lounging on the sofa, scrolling through her phone, barely looked up. Good boy. Did you remember the hot sauce for the falafel? Of course. And I even got you a Diet Coke. Thoughtful, aren't I? Benji meticulously arranged his various purchases on the coffee table, a precarious stack of old magazines and discarded takeaway containers. He cracked open his beer, taking a long, satisfying swig. You're a prince among men, Benji, Trix said, taking the falafel wrap. She unwrapped it, inhaling the greasy, spicy aroma with a sigh of contentment. Benji, meanwhile, had found the remote and clicked on the battered old television set that dominated one corner of the living room. It flickered to life, The 10 o'clock news already underway. A grim-faced female reporter stood outside Downing Street, a backdrop of grey sky and even greyer buildings. And in other news tonight, the reporter intoned, the Labour government is facing growing calls for a leadership challenge amidst renewed criticism of the Prime Minister's handling of the cost of living crisis. The screen cut to a shot of a man in a sharp suit, walking purposefully down a corridor, a gaggle of journalists trailing in his wake. He was older, perhaps late 50s, with a shock of neatly combed grey hair and a stern, trustworthy expression. Benji choked on his Fosters. His eyes, already wide, somehow managed to expand further. Bloody hell, he spluttered, spraying a fine mist of beer onto the television screen. Trix looked up, annoyed. What is it now? Did you just remember you left the gas on? No. Trix, look. That's him. Benji pointed a trembling finger at the screen. That's the bloke. The one you just. He trailed off, gesturing vaguely towards her bedroom. Trix frowned, chewing slowly on her falafel. Her gaze landed on the man on screen. Her eyes narrowed. The expensive tie, the air of quiet authority. She'd seen him, up close and personal, just hours ago, but in the dim light of her bedroom, without the context of a news bulletin. He'd just been another client. No way, she whispered, her voice losing its usual bite. That's not possible. The news anchor reappeared. Labour MP Alan Finch, Shadow Secretary for Housing, was unavailable for comment this evening, as pressure mounts on number 10. Alan Finch, Benji repeated, a strange reverence in his voice. Shadow Secretary for bloody housing, and he was just doing interpretive dance with you. Trix stared at the screen, then at Benji, then back at the screen. Her mind, usually so quick to compartmentalize, was struggling to process this particular piece of information. Alan Finch, a Labour MP, married for 30 years, according to his Wikipedia page, which she was now frantically Googling on her phone. A pillar of the community, a champion of the working class, and a client who liked to be a flexible satnav. Oh, Benji, Trix finally said, a slow, predatory smile spreading across her face. This is good. Benji, still reeling, could only nod mutely. He reached for his Ziploc bag. Suddenly, the evening had taken a very interesting turn. The next morning, the flat felt charged with an unusual energy, less like the usual malaise and more like a simmering pot of mischief. Benji, surprisingly coherent for a man who'd spent half the night contemplating the structural integrity of the sofa with a nose full of illicit powder, was pacing the living room. He's a hypocrite, Trix, Benji declared, thumping a fist into his palm. A big, fat, greasy hypocrite, preaching about family values and public service. Then he's in here, in our gaff, getting his rocks off with you. The nerve of it. Trix, sipping a lukewarm coffee, looked entirely untroubled. That's kind of the job description for politicians, Benji. Hypocrisy. It's like a prerequisite for entering parliament, right after having a really bad haircut and a penchant for arguing about bins. But this is Labour, Benji insisted, as if this made it fundamentally worse. The party of the people, the working man. And he's a bloody MP, cheating on his wife of 30 years with you. No offense, none taken, darling, but you're missing the point, Trix said, tapping a perfectly manicured finger on the table. This isn't just about his hypocrisy. This is about our opportunity. Benji stopped pacing. Our opportunity for what? A good laugh to cause absolute mayhem. Benji, to stick it to the man. To make a little cash. To mock the entire bloody government. Trix's eyes sparkled with an almost childlike glee. Think about it. Alan Finch, Shadow Secretary for Housing, caught in a sex scandal, with a woman of the night, as the tabloids would so delicately put it. Benji's face, usually a canvas of vague confusion, slowly began to clear. You mean, like a proper scandal? With headlines and everything? Oh, I mean a proper scandal. The kind that ends careers. The kind that makes the front page of every red top for a week. Trix leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. And we, Benji, are going to be the architects of his downfall. But how? Benji asked, his mind reeling. He was good at getting high, good at finding discarded takeaway, less good at orchestrating political takedowns. Trix smiled, a cat-like grin. Well, first, we need more evidence than just my word. And second, we need something to really spice it up. Something that screams moral decay and utter disregard for public safety. Benji's eyes lit up. The ketamine, he exclaimed, suddenly understanding. My premium, non-Kevin brand ketamine. Trix clapped her hands. Precisely. We lure him back. We set the scene. We film it. And then, we introduce a little extracurricular activity. A sex tape. Benji gulped. The idea was audacious, terrifying, and utterly thrilling. In your bedroom. Where else? Trix arched an eyebrow. It's got the best lighting, and the least amount of mold. This is brilliant. Trix, Benji said, a genuine excitement bubbling up inside him, untainted by the usual drug-induced stupor. We'll make them look like right fools. Labor going on about austerity, and their bigwig MP is hoovering up ketamine off your bedside table, and not just any ketamine. Darling Benji, your ketamine. A quality product, if I do say so myself. Trix stood up, stretching. Right, step 1. Get our MP back in here. I'll send him a very tantalizing text. Trix's text to Alan Finch was a masterpiece of subtle seduction and calculated manipulation. Short, sweet, and just ambiguous enough to pique curiosity. Thinking of you. The satnav route was memorable. Fancy another journey tonight? My place. Same time within minutes. A reply pinged back. Indeed. A rather demanding day calls for a most delightful detour. See you at 9. He's hooked. Trix announced, flashing her phone at Benji, who was diligently cleaning a small, dusty corner of her bedroom with an old sock. His task, self-appointed, was to ensure the area around her bedside table was sufficiently clean for filming. Excellent, Benji murmured, meticulously wiping a patch of wallpaper. Think he'll expect the ketamine? Not a chance. That's our little surprise. Trix surveyed her bedroom. It was sparse but functional, dominated by a large, slightly creaky bed. She'd strategically placed a few candles, primarily to mask the faint smell of damp, and adjusted the lighting to create a flattering, if slightly shadowy, ambience. Right. The camera, Benji said, fumbling. In a plastic bag he'd brought in, he produced a small, almost imperceptible camera, the kind you'd buy online for home security or, more likely, covert operations. I've set it up on the top of the wardrobe. Good angle, nice and discreet. Brilliant, Benji. Your one moment of genuine competence this week. Oh, I'm good at many things. For example, I'm excellent at identifying different strains of mold. Trix ignored him. And the ketamine? Where are we putting it? Benji thoughtfully tapped his chin. Needs to be visible, but not too obvious. Like he just found it, or it was accidentally left there. He looked around, his eyes alighting on the small, ornate coaster she sometimes used for drinks. Here, on the coaster, right by the bed. Like he put his drink down, and then poof, there it was. A little pile of pure, uncut opportunity. He carefully poured a small, glistening heap of his precious ketamine onto the coaster. It shimmered under the dim light. Perfect, Trix breathed, admiring their handiwork. Now, your role, Benji, is crucial. You're the sound and vision guy. You'll be in the living room, monitoring the feed. Make sure the audio's clear. Make sure we get a good shot of him interacting with the recreational substances. Got it, Benji said, saluting half-heartedly. And if he tries to leave before the interaction, then you, Benji, are my unwitting witness. You barge in, looking like you've just woken from a particularly vivid dream, demanding to know where your spare socks are. It'll be just enough to throw him off balance and give us another chance. My socks, Benji mused. Right. I knew I had a purpose. The evening progressed slowly. Benji, fueled by another can of Foster's and a small bump of his illicit merchandise to get into character, nervously adjusted the feed on a tablet. Trix, cool as a Californian cucumber, retreated to her room to prepare. At precisely 9 o'clock, a polite knock echoed through the flimsy front door. Benji nearly jumped out of his skin. Relaxed, Trix's voice came from her bedroom. Showtime. Benji shuffled to the door, peering through the peephole. Alan Finch, looking impeccably dressed and radiating an aura of discreet respectability, stood on their doorstep. He was smiling, a tired but eager smile. Evening, Mr. Finch, Benji managed, trying to sound casual. She's up, expecting you. Alan Finch gave Benji a brief, dismissive nod, his eyes already sweeping past him. towards the dimly lit hallway. Indeed, always punctual for a private engagement. As Finch disappeared into Trix's bedroom, Benji scurried back to the tablet, his heart thumping. The screen flickered to life, showing Trix, languid and beautiful, greeting the MP. The angle was perfect. The audio was surprisingly clear. Benji watched, a strange cocktail of verism and righteous indignation churning in his gut. The MP was charming. Trix was alluring. The dance began. Then, Trix, with a casual flick of her wrist, nudged the coaster with the ketamine closer to the MP. Alan Finch's eyes, hitherto fixed on Trix, drifted to the sparkling pile. A moment of hesitation. A quick glance at Trix's inviting smile. And then, with a sigh that could have been exhaustion or surrender, Alan Finch, Shadow Secretary for Housing, leaned in. Benji gasped. A triumphant, almost spiritual sound. "Oh, you beauty, Trix," he whispered. "You absolute, glorious beauty." He hit the record button. The aftermath was both anticlimactic and exhilarating. Alan Finch, after his delightful detour, left the flat looking a little more disheveled, a little more satisfied, and entirely oblivious to the small, discreet camera still whirring on top of Trix's wardrobe. As soon as the door clicked shut, Benji burst into Trix's bedroom, a wild grin on his face. "We got him. We got the bastard. Clear as day. Trix. Him. You. The K. It's a masterpiece." Trix, already pulling on a silk robe, gave a slow, satisfied smile. "See, I told you this flat had potential. It just needed a little political theater." They spent the next hour reviewing the footage. It was everything they could have hoped for. Trix, provocative but always in control. Alan Finch, initially cautious, then increasingly enthusiastic. The moment he leaned over the bedside table, sniffing the white powder with a look of furtive pleasure, was priceless. His subsequent, slightly more animated, interpretive dance with Trix was the icing on the cake. "The tabloids are going to love this," Benji cackled, rubbing his hands together. "Shadow Secretary for Housing. Ketamine binge. Cool girl. It's a hat trick of scandal now." "The tricky part," Trix said, her voice serious. "How do we leak it?" "Anonymously, of course. We don't want a visit from Special Branch." "Special Branch?" Benji paused. "Are they the ones who wear the funny hats?" "No, those are the household cavalry. Special Branch are the ones who make your life very, very difficult." Benji blanched. "Right. Anonymous it is, then." He thought for a moment, then snapped his fingers. Trevor from the East London Echo. He owes me a few quid for some information I gave him about a suspiciously large pigeon in Stratford Park." Trix looked doubtful. "The East London Echo? Benji, we need national news. Front page of The Sun, The Mirror, The Daily Mail." "Well, Trevor also moonlights for the national papers sometimes. He's got contacts. He's got that look in his eye that says I will sell my grandmother for a scoop." Benji insisted. "He's our man." It was agreed. Benji, surprisingly, was elected as the point man for the leak. He carefully transferred the video file onto a burner USB stick, feeling like a secret agent in a bad spy movie. The next morning, Benji, looking remarkably tidy for him, actually left the flat before midday. He returned a few hours later, a look of nervous triumph on his face. "It's done," he announced to Trix, who was idly painting her toenails. Gave Trevor the stick. Told him it was explosive labor dirt. He practically wet himself. Said he'd get it to the right people. Swore he'd never reveal his source. "And you trust him?" Trix asked, not looking up. "Trust Trevor? Not as far as I could throw him. But I trust his greed. He knows a career-making story when he sees one. And he knows getting a big scoop means more beer money." They settled into wait. The next few days were excruciating. Benji became obsessed with checking every news website, every tabloid front page, every bulletin. Trix, outwardly calm, was secretly gnawing on her fingernails. Then, on a Tuesday morning, it happened. The front page of the Daily Telegraph screamed in blood-red letters, "Shadow SEC on Ket and hookers. Labour MP's secret shame" below the headline. A grainy still from their video footage. Alan Finch, looking disheveled, a small white pile clearly visible on the coaster beside his hand. His face was blurred, but recognizable. The accompanying article, penned with the usual tabloid relish, painted a vivid picture of moral decay. hypocrisy, and a Labour Party in crisis. Benji found the paper shoved through their letterbox, an unexpected bonus from their local newsagent. He let out a shriek that startled a flock of pigeons nesting on the defunct kebab shop sign. Trix, Trix, get up. It's here. It's actually here. Trix, still tangled in her duvet, stumbled out of her bedroom, rubbing sleep from her eyes. One look at Benji's ecstatic face and the newspaper in his hand was all it took. Her eyes widened. Oh my God. She grabbed the paper, devouring the article. Married father of two, Alan Finch, 58, renowned for his stern stance on social housing policy, was filmed in a notorious East London den of iniquity, engaging in sordid acts with a professional escort, while openly consuming Class B drugs. She looked up, a triumphant grin on her face. Notorious East London den of iniquity. Benji. That's us and sordid acts. Benji crowed. They didn't even mention the satnav bit. That's probably too sordid for them. The subsequent media frenzy was everything they had hoped for, and more. Alan Finch resigned from his shadow cabinet position within hours, citing personal reasons and apologizing profusely to his family and constituents. The Labour Party was engulfed in a firestorm of criticism, facing accusations of a moral vacuum and a party out of touch with working families. Political pundits debated the implications on every news channel. Hashtags trended. Memes were created. The flat on Green Street became, in its own anonymous way, the epicenter of a national scandal. Benji and Trix watched it all unfold from the dubious comfort of their sofa, surrounded by empty crisp packets and the faint scent of triumph. We did it, Trix, Benji said, a profound sense of accomplishment washing over him. He was buzzing, a mix of adrenaline and the remnants of his morning pick-me-up. We genuinely brought down a government minister. Well, a shadow one, but still, we sure did, darling. We stuck it to the man, and proved that even the most inadequate of flats can be a hotbed of political intrigue, Trix said, taking a long drag from a cigarette. And also, that I'm damn good at my job, and I'm good at finding premium ketamine, Benji added, tapping a fresh Ziploc bag. It was a team effort. There was a moment of silence, broken only by the incessant chatter from the TV. So, Benji ventured, Do we get paid for this? Trix shrugged. Not directly, but the publicity. Let's just say my booking calendar just got a lot more interesting. And you, Benji, are now officially a co-conspirator in a national scandal. That's got to count for something, right? Benji considered this. He looked around their squalid, beloved flat. The peeling paint, the worn carpet, the flickering television. Life would go on. The flat would remain inadequate. His appetite for drugs and lukewarm lager would remain robust. But for one glorious, scandalous week, he and Trix had been at the very heart of the news. And that, Benji decided, was almost as good as a fresh bump of premium K. Right then, he said, reaching for the remote. What's on after the news? I fancy a bit of reality TV. Something with a bit of genuine drama, for a change. Trix just smiled, blowing a perfect smoke ring towards the ceiling. Their work here was done. For now.